It's 2nd of January 25. I'm just looking at this Daily Mail story about Sweden and their asylum. They've got it down to their lowest since 1997, but it's still too many to me, you hear these things. But basically, Sweden was one of those that embraced, multiculturalism. And now they've had big gun problems and stuff. Uh, they've done a complete reversal since 2022 election, but it's actually the old politicians that have managed to stay by, well, the Conservative parties went in with the Swedish Democrats, who Swedes should be voting for, still on this issue, because you can never trust the old parties on this, because they've actually created the disasters all over Europe, and America, and the places that Britain colonised, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, America. Yeah. So I went back to their low since 1997, but it's still far too many. And this is just talking about asylum as well. It's not talking about legal, which is by far changing the country a lot more than asylum. So it probably doesn't make that much difference, really. I mean, it's a good signal, but for decades, Sweden was hailed as a beacon of compassion, offering an unparalleled welcome to refugees, with Europe's most generous support schemes. I think it was around about 1983 they started. Canada started about 1972, I think, so did Australia. For USA, the big change was maybe 1965 under Johnson. I think it was Kennedy who was going to bring it in. The Nordic states. Sweden celebrated cultural diversity by funding migrants' efforts to maintain their native languages and traditions. But in the past decade, deadly violence linked to feuds between criminal gangs has escalated against the backdrop of the high levels of migration into the country. So if they're blaming all that on the newcomers, I would say they were looking at the countries they're coming from. This is predicted probably. So really the politicians have actually destroyed West Europe and the colonised British countries around the world, which seem to be seen as Disneylands basically. I mean, I don't think the BRICS countries are going through this, or not in the same way, not unnatural long distance type. They might be going through it from neighbouring countries in the natural way it happens. It's meant to be just economic, basically. I mean, this isn't even economic. This is about serious countries as Disneyland, and they expect the current majorities to keep it. It's like you've maybe got a ladder, or you're not even got a car at all. Suddenly you get the car keys for a BMW, and the current majorities of those countries have to keep the BMW in good condition, pay insurance and all that, while you go through red lights and stuff, I mean, nothing would make me happier than the whole world being like Germany in 1946 or Japan in 1946, creating very desirable countries. But it doesn't seem to be happening in a lot of the world. We need to keep trying and asking why, keep having conferences about it, how to make these countries desirable to the people that live there. And to others, you could see there might become a day where Jay-Z and Beyonce want to have a mansion in Africa or something, as another holiday home. Probably not at the moment, I don't think. I'm just saying them. I mean anybody. I mean Jeremy Corbyn as well. Maybe Corbynistas, they have a holiday home in Africa. That sort of thing. But it doesn't seem to be happening at the moment. During 2015 migration crisis. Sweden stunned the world by taking nearly 163,000 asylum seekers. Mostly Syrian, I think they were. So nearly 9,000 were getting there this year, which is still far too many considering the size of the country. And that's the illegals, really. That's not the legals. Who knows what the legals are? 200,000 or something? We don't even know. They're not telling us. And so 5,000 of them have voluntarily returned home. So that leaves them with 4,000 irregulars. And remember that one that killed that one in Britain who got British citizenship. I think he was an Afghan. He was 21 or something. He went to Sweden first and they kicked him out for some reason. So I think he went to France and then he went down to Spain and he got a ferry to Southampton or Portsmouth or whatever it was. And he was about 19 then. He'd already killed somebody in the migrant route through one of the Central Europe countries. He'd already killed somebody. This didn't seem to be known at the time. Or anyway, when he got to Britain, our government put him in school because he said he was 14, so they put him in school. And then he went on to murder a young man in Southampton or wherever it was he stayed. So yeah, and then once he's served his time, he'll be British. He'll be back out in the British streets as a British citizen. Probably 20 years or something. He'll probably only be about 41, if that. He'll be maybe even younger, 36 or something. Because when you get life, it's not really life, you know. So when they voluntarily returned home, did they get paid for that? I had something like they're getting paid, because that's not going to be a good idea, because people are just going to turn up so you get paid to get back home. This dramatic reversal is credited to a sweeping package of reforms following a landmark election in 2022. Yeah, so there's... But when you compare it really, I mean, it was around about the 30,000 mark, maybe. It went up or down. So if you compare that odd year, it was still way up at 10, 15, 20,000 or something, so you need to get down even lower than that, really. Sweden has been described as a haven for mafia gangs. Oh, that's nice, isn't it? Off the back of surging migration. That's not really very positive. Are these people not being arrested for calling it that? And Sweden may have net immigration for the first time since the 1960s. We can only dream of that here, you know. But net doesn't count, no. You've got to go by gross, because gross is newcomers. So Johan Fossel is the architect of it, but he's one of the old party politicians. You can't rely on that. You've got to get Swedish Democrats in as a protest vote. The Swedes are so nice that they'll keep voting for the old parties, even though they really want this to stop, you know. Same as the whole of Europe. It does not mean that the country does not well, to be honest, it should really. Or understand the situation in the face. Well, it's not Sweden's problem, you know. If Sweden wants to help, they can find out how they can make the place they've come from stable, you know, and desirable. But because it is impossible to manage the task, they're going to go on about we haven't got the resources and that, but that's a side issue, you know. You're making the whole country unstable, making it anarchic. So Sweden's not going to be in a very good shape economically if it's just anarchy. humanitarian superpower. But as gang-related gun violence and bombings soared, critics warned that the country was being stretched to the breaking point. It had the EU's highest rate of, seeker per capita in 2023. Oh no, murders I think they're talking about. 40 people had been shot dead. And that was a 35% decrease compared to 2022. 63 people were shot dead. So, personally I see this as the left has created this utopia, because they've always been there to call people the R word, anyone anxious, and you've been allowed to say it's a success already and it's going to be a utopia. I mean, shouldn't people be charged for destroying Sweden, basically? The politicians and anyone who's stopped, who's also helped. You know, is that another way we should be looking? We've just had the problem in New Orleans yesterday, and outside Trump Tower in Las Vegas as well. The gangs have begun using social media platforms as digital marketplaces to openly recruit children, some as young as 11, to commit murders and bombings across the Nordic region. I think really you're going to have to reverse, basically, if you don't want to become anarchic. I mean, it's okay to say Sweden's going to be a utopia. That's not going to get you jailed if it turns out anarchic, probably. But you're not allowed to be anxious about it at all, or you get called the R word, or you might go to jail, you know, for trying to predict the future that way. You can say anything positive you like, you know. Even, you know, there's deadly shootings and stuff, you know. Only 29% of shootings were solved in 2022. And they're going to have cameras and drones everywhere, the police. I mean, really, my message is to Sweden, you've got to vote Sweden Democrats, you've got to try and get Sweden back to what it was like in the 1960s, basically. Remember how stable it was. I mean, even the other Scandinavian neighbours began warning about Swedish conditions because of the spillover of gang violence. And that's an insult to Italy, really, you know. It depends what kind of Italian they're talking about, because Italy's very different now as well. But if it's people have been jumping from Italy and then to Sweden, but to put Italy in with Somalia, I mean, Italy is one of the desirable countries. I'm just letting you hear and the centre-right moderates only managed to form a government striking a deal with the Sweden Democrats. So that's probably going to be what's happened in most countries. You know, here it will be reform. I think Labour are just about to come crashing down, so are the Tories. It looks as if the native nice people have finally given up on Labour and the Tories are. Don't quote me on that, no. Because the islands just floated back in Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Sinn Féin again, even though they've been out in the streets protesting about this. Their politicians want it. Since then, the reforms have come thick and fast. Family unifications have been tightened. That's a very important bit. I mean, really, if you do get asylum, it should be until your country becomes safe again, basically. So it should be temporary. Some placed under editorial surveillance and confined to special centres. Yeah, that has to happen. Well done, Rupert Lowe. He's saying all the right things. Rupert Lowe, MP, he's saying all the right things on this issue. Well, mostly. It's probably a bit too soft still in the UK. He seems to be the star at the moment. Him and Robert Jenrick. The only ones talking sense, really. They're the only ones in the right ballpark. The right Overton window area. As I say, I think in a few years, native female Green and Labour voters will be saying that Nigel Farage is far too soft on this issue. They'll be saying that in 5 or 10 years' time. It's now stepping away from traditional asylum status and pushing more migrants into the subsidiary protection category. That's right. Requires a renewal every 13 months and only extends beyond 3 years. Yep, that's it. But really, it should just be temporary all over. I think Denmark have already done that. The goal is to return to the pre-1970s immigration model, so prioritising skilled guest workers and limiting asylum to only those with undisputable claims. I would even stop that. People for asylum should get it through in our neighbouring countries. Maybe it seems what they want is they want the natives of Europe or those who have created the nice former British colonies, the majority have created the nice. So maybe get them to run new countries there, new small countries, to get them off on their feet, you know. I mean, Japan, South Korea are very desirable countries, so. And Russia's not a desirable country, so there are exceptions like. I mean, China is second biggest now, so that should be one of the places where Afghans are really wanting to go. It doesn't seem to be happening. I think they might even have a border, I'm not sure. No, maybe not. Yeah, we're going back to basics, adding that restricting family reunification has already delivered results. Yeah, that's an important bit. Because remember, for every man you see getting off one of these dinghies, once he gets asylum from the British government, which they always get, I think it's a 99% rate or something, they then bring, I think somebody said they could bring 16 relatives, I'm not sure, but definitely first close family. And the same goes for legals as well, you know. And then those dinghies are just a percent of the illegal ones. A lot are just coming through in planes and overstaying visas and stuff. And yeah. The question is, why are they wanting to leave beautiful warm countries, you know? I mean, I'm not bothered about this man that did a language integration test. I mean, how can you make somebody integrate if they don't want to integrate? I mean, they can still do whatever they do in their private groups, you know, like the FG or whatever. Well, most European nations, that was once a badge of pride. Syrians, who made up a third of the 2015 wave, now dominate Sweden's refugee population, numbering 111,000. Many of them are expected to return home yeah, but as dual citizens, they'll probably just go back for holidays and to buy property to rent out and stuff. And 100,000 undocumented immigrants remain in Sweden. I mean, for a country of 10 million, it's a lot. And they form what he calls a shadow society. Currently, even convicted criminals who can't be deported are allowed to remain in Sweden, receiving benefits and holding jobs. In the past, Sweden's leniency allowed undocumented immigrants to reapply for asylum after 4 years of living in the shadows. So they just had to hang out for 4 years, possibly helped by community members, you know. A policy for self-cess led to tragic consequences. I mean, maybe someday Forsell should be jailed for what he said before 2022, you know, on the subject, as a government minister or whatever, if he was, for destroying Sweden, basically. A decade ago, when Forsell served as a migration spokesman, so there you go. He was one of those that called the native Swedes the R word if they were anxious about this. And they were allowed to say it's going to be a utopia, but if you were anxious about it, you could be jailed, basically. You know, you had maybe you were predicting, rather than predicting it, a utopia. The minister said Sweden was once recognised as a country where everything worked perfectly before it erupted into chaos. And this is he was a migration spokesman. But now nations are asking Sweden how they flipped the situation so quickly, becoming a role model in handling a seemingly out of control immigration crisis. And although Sweden may no longer be the superpower of its humanitarian heyday under Forsell's leadership, it has carved out a new identity, one that prioritises control, integration and a no-nonsense approach to integration. Still not enough, but it's a start. That's the illegal part that they're talking about. Yeah, that's what happened in the Roman Empire, basically. The difference is that, the Roman Empire, I don't know, it seemed pretty something to admire, really, but although they were pretty violent and all that, but the West is highly desirable. It's the most desirable empire ever. So when people say it's going to fall, it's going to fall because of the anarchy, but if it wasn't for that, it wouldn't fall because it's so desirable and the people behaved. Any country can be like that. I mean, there shouldn't be rise and falls of empires now, because it should be every country a United Nations, you know, of desirable countries. I mean, I should desire to move to Somalia or Afghanistan. So should Jeremy Corbyn, so should Keir Starmer, Jay-Z and Beyonce. You know, we should desire just beauty and warmth of the country. And you've got to ask why they don't feel that way. I won't tell you why I don't. Yeah, there really isn't a will. That's why you need to vote out the old parties, basically. You need to do a protest vote. So ladies who vote Labour and the Greens and all that, you know, SNP, Clyde Cymru, Sinn Féin, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Democrats, I'm speaking to you as you have been enablers of what's happened in Sweden and your own countries. And you need to do a protest vote now if you want to try and, well, in my opinion, to keep women's rights to what you like, you know. Okay, bye-bye.